There was a line from the text that I wrote which I think sort of summed up the body of work, and it's just 2 words which I think works well, and it's just wonderfully pathetic. And I feel like that's, with that sort of is where we're at. You know, I was working with a lot of this linen, and I was making like really perfect shapes on it before when I was doing the abstract stuff. And I just got so tired of making work that was like super clean. Like if you were to like get a little smudge on it, the work would be spoiled. And it was sort of like dishonest and impractical. Like I just thought like, why don't you make work that can take a bit of a beating? Why don't you make stuff that, you know, is a bit muddy and like you can, you know, it's just a bit more honest about our context, I think. Yeah, this also needs quite a lot more work. Actually, both of these should get totally rolled back up. But this big one could maybe use one more layer and then go to the show, I think. Okay, so I'm quite excited about the bat. It's got such a hectic energy. I think that on a wall with a bunch of other things, it'll make, I don't know how to put it, effect on the wall. And then I'm very excited about, it's because it's really quite new, these like very washy portraits. So like the red one, for example, over here on the black. This is, the reference is from some horror movie, and it's barely a face. But I like that if you look up close, it's just a muddle of paint, but if you step back, it's definitely some kind of face. You can definitely feel there's something a bit terrifying about it. But the fact that it's done with so little pigment and it's so free flowing. You know, something like the pink face over there is almost too intentional, whereas this has that sense of it, like the painting almost painted itself. I'm almost more interested in painting than I am in the subject that I'm painting. So like the possibilities of painting. I wanted to work with oil paint in a way where it's almost like watercolors. So that I could layer endlessly. So I can make endless layers without it becoming impasto. So I'm mixing very diluted paints here. You can see this is like, it's got very little pigment in it. So if I was to do like use like a very subtle wash here, you know, and it just enables me to make stuff that you can flat pack, that you can roll up, that doesn't crack. That's, yeah, basically like watercolor techniques. If you're open in the studio and you just don't go against the medium and just see what happens, quite magical things can happen that you can catch. And this one also came together weirdly after. It started with a thing I was painting that looked like it was a 3D, one of those 3D models of this weird gothic creature, which didn't work out, but somehow one part of it suggested an ear. And so then it just became a face after another 3 or 4 layers. And it also didn't have any energy until I added that little red dot and white dot for the eye and this row of teeth. This thing was like in a pile somewhere, and I thought it was terrible. And as I was going through the piles the other day, I pulled it out and I thought, actually, looking at it now, like a month later, I think it's great. It needs to go up on the wall. So some of these things will accumulate stuff and I'll still think that it's just rubbish. but at some point you might pull something out and you suddenly see what it actually is, because sometimes you're too close to it. I think that when I was younger, I wanted everything to be perfect, and I wasn't okay with this mush, this like mud. Like I was always disappointed with it, and I feel like I've grown to be okay with this sort of endless soup of failure, and then something arises out of it that has just that sparkle. It's just sort of real and honest, but it can't just be soup. Something has to come together that has like a life to it. Like if something has an energy that you can't necessarily define, but it just it keeps your attention.